Hey, welcome to JavaScript the game. So here we are on codefights.com, and we're going to get started here in just a minute. But before we do, a lot of people ask me, what's this stream all about? So it's an experiential learning stream. Specifically, we're going to be learning JavaScript. And when I say experiential learning, I mean we're going to be learning by doing. So let's get into specifics of that. Here's what I'm going to do. First of all, we're going to be solving problems, specifically codefights.com. We're going to be looking at the arcade intro tasks. Our goal is to get through all 60 of them. And the idea is that traditionally, a lot of educators will start by introducing a concept, introducing a new tool, something like that, and then looking at examples afterwards of how it sort of applies in the real world. I kind of want to flip that around. So we're going to be looking at examples. We're going to be looking at examples of problems. And then from there, we're going to introduce the tools that we'll need in order to solve those problems. We're going to also talk more generally about programming. The analogy I like to use here is basically if you're trying to learn, well, really any discipline, let's say philosophy, biology, if you want to learn those things, if you want to talk about a philosophical idea, we need a language to be able to talk about it. So maybe you want to use English, maybe something else. But the point is, in order to get at these philosophical ideas, we have to do it through the basis of a language. And programming is really similar. So there's going to be these common programming ideas, these paradigms, these patterns that emerge regardless of what language we use. But we do need some kind of language to be able to get into those. So in this case, we're going to be using JavaScript. But a lot of the concepts that we're going to look at are going to be pretty general. They're going to be applicable to pretty much any programming language you might want to look at. So the other thing is I'm going to be answering questions. I mean, the whole point of this is I want to make sure you learn from this. I want to make sure that you have your questions answered. So if you do have a question, please, you're more than welcome to ask. We should talk also about what I'm not going to do here. So I'm never going to just show something. I'm never just going to post some code without explaining what it's doing. I'm always going to give an introduction anytime there's a new concept or something like that. But I probably won't really repeat myself a lot. That's the other thing. So basically, the only time I won't explain something is if it's already been explained before in a previous video. I don't want this to be repetitive for anyone. So I will explain everything that I do, but without repeating myself a lot. I'm not going to cover absolutely every detail of JavaScript. Again, to sort of continue the analogy we were using before about using a language to get at these higher level ideas. Basically, if we're talking about English, there's lots of English words. There's something like, well, depending on who you ask, there's something like 200,000 English words in current use, whereas most people only know maybe like 10% of those, right? So basically the idea is that you don't need to know absolutely every part of a language in order to get by with it. So we're basically going to be looking at the tools that we need to solve the problems that we're going to be doing. We're not just going to look at absolutely all of JavaScript. We're not going to cover all the subtleties, all the nuances. We're going to cover what we need. That's the main thing. But it should be enough to get by. And the other thing is, look, if you are looking for sort of an encyclopedic knowledge of JavaScript, if you want to know all of it, look, there are resources for that. I'll show you some good ones. But the main thing is that we're just going to be looking at how to solve the problems. That's the main thing. Okay, if you've used CodeFights before, you know there's hidden tests. Basically, for every problem, we have some visible tests and some hidden tests. And with the arcade problems, you can spend some coin to buy the hidden tests. I'm not going to be doing any of that. I'm not going to be showing the hidden tests. I mean, the main thing is that we don't need them. There's no reason for us to be using the hidden tests. As long as we understand how the algorithm is working, we really shouldn't need something like the hidden test. So I'm not going to be showing those. I mean, to be honest, it's generous that they even give us the visible tests. Like they didn't have to do that. Most of the time, like in the real world, you've got to do all your debugging on your own. So it's not like you're going to have these tests ready to go. So they're generous to have given us the visible tests. We'd be greedy to ask for the hidden tests as well. Okay, so basically, if I wanted to summarize all this in terms of what I'll be doing, what I won't be doing, the one word I would use is mentorship. Uh, you know, it's easy to learn from a mentor. When I first started to try to learn programming, I was trying to learn it on my own, and I felt like I really would have benefited from the help of a mentor. So that's kind of the role that I'm going to try to provide for you. Someone you can just ask questions to, just about little things, instead of having to search on the internet. I mean, a lot of these kinds of things, it's hard to even sort of think about how to even phrase a Google search for a lot of these things. It just makes a lot more sense to sort of interact with a human being who's traveled the path already. So I'm going to mainly be trying to provide that kind of mentorship. So if you're wondering, who is this for? Is this stream for you? Are you going to be able to get something out of it? Well, first and foremost, it's going to start anyway for beginners. It's going to start for people who don't really have a lot of programming background, who don't really have a lot of experience with it. I basically want to provide an entry point for new learners. But the thing is, like I said before, I'm not really going to be repeating myself a lot. So at the beginning, we're going to be starting with a lot of fundamentals. We're going to be starting with the basics. But once I've explained those things already, it's not like I'm going to repeat myself. So, it's not like we're going to be on like the 25th challenge and I'll be like, oh, function is an input output system. Like we've already explained that. We've already gone, like, we're going to use functions, but I'm not going to introduce the concept every single time. I mean, you can watch the VODs. I'm going to post all this stuff to YouTube, so you'll be able to review this stuff, and I'm going to kind of assume that you will. So basically, all that to say that the stream isn't always going to be, like if you already have some experience and you're finding like, all right, get to the point, it's not always going to be like that. I mean, at the beginning, we are going to really try to get into detail about some of the fundamentals, some of the basics of the language or programming in general, but we're going to move up from there. So even if you do have some experience, even if you're pretty good already, you might find that you'll learn something. And if not, like if you already know more than I do, that's perfect. I would really like to learn from you. I mean, I definitely consider myself a learner first, and so for sure, if you have any pointers on how I can improve, on how I can maybe do things differently, definitely, I'd love to hear it. So overall, really, streams for anyone who's cool, who's sort of interested in this JavaScript thing. I mean, you don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be considering a career in the field, or even a hobby. You don't have to be a coder. You do have to be cool. Okay, so how are you going to get the best results out of this stream? What actions can you be doing to make sure you're getting something out of it? Well, first of all, I mean, I mentioned it's experiential learning. So I'm kind of expecting you to follow along, to do the problems. I mean, these are all freely available. It's just on codefights.com. If you don't have an account yet, go make an account. Go make one right now. Pause the video if you're watching this on YouTube. Go make your account. I want you to be able to follow along with these problems and to do them yourself, because really that's how you're going to learn. I mean, programming is a skill. It's not just a collection of knowledge. It's not like taking a history course where you're mainly memorizing things. I mean, yes, there's going to be some memorization. We're going to want to know some of the features of the language and how they're going to apply. But the main thing is that programming is a skill. It's something that you have to learn by doing. It's like a sport or a game. If you want to get better at it, you need experience. You need to actually do it for yourself. So I am expecting that you're going to be doing the problems yourself. And because of that, and since I'm not really going to be repeating a lot of the stuff that I say, I do want you to make sure that you don't miss anything. That like there isn't something that I mentioned before that's kind of crucial, and if you miss it, then might make it difficult to learn the next stuff. So anyway, be sure to rewind, watch the VODs. I mean, go back, make sure you're caught up. And look, if you're in the chat right now, definitely feel free to ask a question. If you're wondering, okay, when I say stupid question, I mean like what is a variable? Something that maybe is considered like kind of fundamental, like something that seems sort of basic. Maybe you're afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to ask. I mean, we've all got to start somewhere. That's going to be sort of one of the themes ongoing throughout the stream. But the main thing is that I don't expect you to be an expert, and I do want you to feel comfortable asking those kinds of questions, because again, that's the kind of thing I wish I had when I was first trying to learn this stuff. Okay, and this is probably the most important note right here. Look, programming can be demoralizing. I don't think there's a single person who I've talked to who has even just a little bit of experience with programming who hasn't at some point got stuck, who hasn't just got to a point where you've got something that seems like a very simple problem and it seems like it should be easy to work through, but you just can't seem to make your way through it. You're up on Google and you're spending hours just trying to figure out this problem, what to even ask to figure it out. And I mean, that can be so frustrating. It can really be soul destroying. So I want you to definitely try to persevere, try to maintain that confidence, do believe in yourself. With programming especially, I mean, anything is possible. Anything you can imagine, it can be done. The question is, are you willing to put in the work to make it happen? Okay, so there are going to be some fundamental questions that we're going to be aiming to answer with this stream, and these are going to be sort of like the main themes throughout this whole thing. So, number one, where do I start? What's my entry point? If you're wondering, like, how do I get into programming? What's like the prerequisites that I need to know? That's going to be one of our main questions. And it seems like a simple question, but in some ways this is actually the one that I sort of got hung up on the most when I was first starting. The next one is, what does good code look like? What does it mean for code to be good? And this one is actually going to be one of the tougher questions to answer, because the idea of good code is actually kind of a nebulous thing. We can look at two algorithms and we're going to be looking at ways of comparing them and saying, like, this one's more efficient, maybe this one's easier to read. But it's not the sort of thing where we're going to be able to just give a one-sentence answer for what good code constitutes. The third one is kind of similar. How can I become a good programmer? But this one's actually kind of two questions in one, because we're sort of asking, like, what does it mean to be a good programmer? Like, kind of like the previous one, what is good code? What does a good programmer look like? What are sort of the characteristics and features of a good programmer? And then secondly, how can I develop those features? What steps can I be taking in order to get there myself? So those are sort of the three main questions we're going to be looking at. Again, these are sort of the three questions that I kind of struggled with when I was first trying to break into programming. So again, they're not going to be easy questions to answer. It's not just going to be something simple that we can just address very easily. It's going to be the sort of thing that we're going to have to think about. We're going to always sort of return to and revisit these problems. I'm going to make references to these for pretty much all the problems we're going to be looking at. So we're always going to sort of keep these in mind. And with that, I mean, we might as well actually get started. We might as well take a look at some of these first few problems. So we'll switch over to Code Fights now. Good luck with these. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, so